Following presentation is centered around the importance of coaching education, using the National Association for Sport and Physical Education, the NASPE, also utilizing the National Standards for Sport Coaches, which is the NSSC. My name is Coach Kyle Bostater. A little information about myself to introduce myself. I'm the boys varsity basketball coach at Delta High School in Northwest Ohio. I'm in my second season. I have 6 years of coaching experience, all at Delta High School. I've coached the 7th grade, the 9th grade, JV, and varsity teams in my 6 years that I've been here. The focus of this presentation is centered around the NASPE and NSSC in correlation with its relevance to coaching education. A little bit of an overview about the NASPE and coaching education. Using the NASPE and various academic sources as a backbone, the following presentation will discuss the importance of coaching education and the need to continually be a student of the coaching profession. As I've said, what is the NASPE? The NASPE stands for the National Association for Sport and Physical Education. The NSSC, the National Standards for Sport Coaches. Why is coaching education important? That's what we're going to focus on in this presentation. Coaching education is integral for coaches to continue to develop into exceptional coaches. What's the relationship between the two? That's going to be something that we're going to discuss throughout this presentation as well. The NASPE was developed to make more competent coaches. So there's definitely a correlation between the two. Also in this presentation, we're going to take a look at some examples of poor coaching, and also we're going to take a look at some exemplary coaches as well. So what is the NASPE? Well, according to Hammermeister, in 2006, NASPE called on experts from national governing bodies of sport, the United States Olympic Committee, the National Federation of State High School Associations, and NASPE leadership to review and revise the popular 1995 standards for athletic coaches to be more consistent with current sport research and best practice. The end result is the National Standards for Sport Coaches. These standards are the roots of coaching education programs, especially through Ohio University. Coaches that abide by and follow these 8 domains of coaching will be better suited to handle all challenges surrounding the coaching profession. Which leads us to our next point, the 8 domains of the NSSC. And we talked about this is exactly what Ohio University's coaching education is based foundly upon. You can see there's different domains. There are 8 of them in total. Up at the top of the page, there's a link. And if you go click on that, it's going to redirect us to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, known for their Division III football program as well. As you can see on here, you have the different domains. Domain number 1 is philosophy and ethics. Domain number 2 is safety and injury prevention. Number 3, physical conditioning. 4, growth and development. 5, teaching and communication. 6, sports skills and tactics. 7, organization and administration. And number 8 is evaluation. Now, as you can see, under each one of these domains, there are different standards, totaling up to 40 standards in all. A couple examples that we are going to take a look at here real quick, and we're going to touch on this more later on in the presentation. You have standard number 1, develop and implement an athlete-centered coaching philosophy. And that's just in your philosophy, making sure that the athlete comes first. You're doing whatever is best for the athlete. The coach comes second to the athlete there. If you skip down to domain number 4, another one we'll take a look at quickly is standard number 18. This is where it provides athletes with responsibility and leadership opportunities as they mature. So that's something I know I do personally in my program. But I just like this link. I thought it was extremely helpful as well. But there's several standards on here that coaches can look at. In addition to that, if you cruise around on the site a little bit, they give you examples of each one and how you can put that into your own program. So it's a neat site. It's worth checking out. So in order to get a better understanding of the NSSC, what we're going to look at are each domain individually. The first one, like I said, is about philosophy and ethics. So, what does it mean to be ethical? According to Hammermeister, being ethical means doing what is right and good, as well as avoiding what is wrong and bad. Being ethical also implies adhering to both professional and moral standards of just behavior. So, being ethical allows coaches to be influential. It also allows us to be a role model and to model our behavior for our athletes. Athletes can learn morals, values through their coaches, and it's also a great opportunity for coaches to teach life lessons. I know a few that we do in my program are about accountability, punctuality, responsibility, work ethic, etc. During the basketball season, players spend 6 days a week and 2 to 3 hours a day minimum with their coach. So the coach needs to be properly educated on a solid background in philosophy and ethics. As you can see up here, I have an example. I know we already looked at standard number 1, standard number 2, identify, model, and teach positive values learned through sport participation. And that's huge. Like I said, we can be role models. Sport also grants coaches the opportunity to teach life lessons, which is what we've touched on as well. When it comes down to being ethical, I think a great coach to take a look at is none other than John Wooden. John Wooden developed the Pyramid of Success. From 1964 to 1965, Wooden's UCLA teams won 10 out of 12 national titles. Coaches and players both would benefit from being educated about Wooden's principles based out of faith and patience. And if you follow the link I have down here, the Pyramid of Success, you can see it down to the bottom left, but we'll also take a look at it here. And as you can see, his Pyramid of Success, it has a lot of different parts to it. You have competitive greatness, poise, confidence, skill. It's a great tool to take a look at as far as if you're trying to build your own philosophy. I think John Wooden's a great person to model yourself after. Moving on to domain number 2. Here we're going to focus on safety and injury prevention through the NSSC. A few things, I'm going to relate it to my own personal experience here as a coach in the state of Ohio. But as far as going through safety and injury prevention, coaches can provide a safe environment for all players to participate by being proactive and mostly by using common sense. Hammermeister states one of the most important things you can do to ensure the safety of your athletes is to provide appropriate supervision. Like I said, my personal experience in Ohio, we have to do what's called the PAV, which is a 3-year license. Here, coaches are required to be educated on player injury, safety, injury, prevention, treatment, etc. New information and popular ideas such as the importance of vitamin D was what we learned about this past year. Also that chocolate milk can be a great recovery drink for athletes to take. But even coaches, I know one of the major things you have to prioritize is player safety. One of the standards, standard number 5 under domain number 2, prevent injuries by providing safe facilities. It sounds simple, but like I said, you need to make sure that you're doing that in advance and being proactive with that. Ohio coaches are also now required to receive concussion training to inform coaches on how to treat and diagnose concussion symptoms effectively. The more coaches that are educated on safety and prevention, the safer our athletes are going to be. And there's also going to be a better understanding about injury prevention. So really nothing can go wrong with educating your coaches on some of these domains such as safety and prevention. Domain number 3, physical conditioning. This is where we can talk a little bit about static versus dynamic stretching, the importance of a warm-up and a cool-down, drug-free athletes and coaches. We'll take another look at a standard. Also, we'll touch a little bit on sport nutrition. Obviously, physical condition is a major component of sport, and coaches need to be educated on proper techniques to teach athletes to reach their full potential. Coaches need to understand that studies have found that school-based programs can contribute to physical activity levels both during youth and later life. If coaches are able to teach athletes the proper mechanics of physical conditioning early in life, these traits are going to carry on in athletes later on down the road. Different sports also have different training and exercises to prepare them for athletic competition. So coaches in a particular sport, need to be well educated on exercises suitable to athletes in that sport. Now, one of the things up here we see static versus dynamic stretching, just a little bit of information about that. Static stretching is usually an example would be quad pulls where you stretch the muscle, but there's really not a whole lot of movement going on with that. Dynamic stretching is not supposed to be confused with ballistic stretching, which are two different things. Dynamic stretching is going to be used to increase range of motion. Example, you're trying to stretch. It's basically doing exercises that are going to be used in your sport. That's also according to Hammermeister as well. Warm up, the importance of a warm up, it increases your heart rate into the ideal heart rate zone. Your cool down decreases your heart rate into your ideal zone. So those are two things coaches need to be educated on as well. Drug-free athletes will reach their full potential. Drug-free coaches are going to be able to exhibit great leadership as well. So we want to make sure that our coaches are abiding by that as well. Like I said, it goes back to being a role model. As far as domain number 3, standard number 12, it's important for coaches to create training programs designed for their specific sport. We talked about that. You're not going to have the football players on the exact same workout as maybe what you're going to have your cross-country guys. That's not necessarily going to be something we're going to try to get into. Sport nutrition, you just want to make sure you know what you're putting into your body. That's going to be a major component of that. Moving on to domain number 4. Domain number 4 is about growth and development. A personal goal that I have within my program is that our coaching staff encourages our teenage boys to conduct themselves as young men. This also gives coaches a great time to model behavior. So one of those things is dressing professionally. As you can see, my personal favorite, down in the bottom left, you have Frank Vogel of the Indiana Pacers modeling, I guess you could say, some professionalism there. You also have Doc Rivers, another prominent coach in the NBA, doing so as well. Being civilized, being respectable, making athletes responsible for their own actions. Coaches just need to realize that athletes develop at different paces and not every athlete develops at the same rate. So maturity levels are going to play a factor with that. You're not going to be able to do the same exercises with your 4th grade basketball team in comparison to your varsity boys basketball team. They're going to mature at different levels. Domain number 5 leads us into teaching and communication. Coaches are given the unique opportunity to be able to teach athletes on a daily basis. If you look at standard number 19 here, you're going to be able to provide a positive learning environment for your athletes. That's going to come up huge. Guidelines for positive discipline is something that we're going to take a look at as well. This is in Hammermeister. Tom Cole of the Ohio Volleyball Coaches Association has developed a set of guidelines which embody the term positive discipline. A few examples that we get from Tom Cole in this idea of positive discipline include minimizing verbalizing, establish an authority early, avoid screaming, avoid sarcasm, and strive to view problems from the athlete's perspective. The list continues to go on through 17 different positive disciplines, but I really do believe that's a very good tool that coaches could be educated on. Coach-athlete relationships. Sometimes when dealing with coach-athlete relationships, you have role model figures. You might even have a father figure. Coaches maybe are a critic, maybe they're a friend, etc. To the left there, you have Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant, who obviously had their success. But even Phil Jackson has gone on to say that, the relationship between athlete-coach might not be the best all the time, but the athletes are still going to look up to a coach, and that's our goal with that. And finally, communication cannot be stressed enough. Communication is a two-way street, speaking and listening. A lot of times we leave out the listening part. Hammermeister states listening is arguably the most important language skill. There's always something to be said about good listeners. Moving on to domain number 6. Sports skills and tactics. One of the biggest emphases here that I have is to be a student of the game. Coaches are constantly seeking strategies and tactics that will maximize athlete performance. Coaches should attend clinics, seminars, and camps that increase knowledge of their specific sport. This is a great opportunity for us in Domain 6 to emphasize even what we're trying to do with this presentation is the emphasis of coaching education. Continuing that education onto like you can at Ohio University, the master's program for coaching education. Gallimore, Gilbert, and Trudell state in one of their articles, sport coaching does not indeed demand a recognition and retention of professional knowledge, but it is the ability to use this knowledge to resolve complex situations, specific problems that separates a knowledgeable coach from an effective coach. This quotation explains that the difference between a knowledgeable coach and an effective coach is simply the retention of professional knowledge. An example of that, coaching education. And that's our goal, is to strive to be exceptional, effective coaches. Be familiar with the sport history, strategies, techniques, and components of scouting. That all goes into sport skills and tactics. Standard number 27, know the skills, elements of skill combinations, and techniques associated with being a sport coach. That's just being sport specific, making sure that you know exactly what it takes to be a basketball coach, to have a nice solid background in that. This just reemphasizes that coaches should continue to develop on a professional and technical level, which in turn will have a positive influence on coach and players. So here, the emphasis is all about continuing your education as a coach. Domain number 7, organization and administration. Here we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting, fundraising, public relations, and bookkeeping. Now, me personally, this is something that I'm getting better at as I continue to grow and continue to learn, but it definitely is a challenge for most coaches. There is a need for coaches to have applicable knowledge on handling the financial responsibilities that are required to run a successful program. Hammermeister of 2010 states, making a budget does not require an advanced degree in accounting. What it does require is common sense and some hard work. Fundraising can come in a variety of forms, such as sponsors, donors, boosters, etc. So that's going to be a major part that coaches are going to have to deal with. Also here, you want to make the media your friend, dealing with public relations. Media can take the form of local newspaper, cable companies, radio broadcasters. The list goes on and on with that. Domain number 7, standard 35. Manage all information, documents, and records for the program. That's relating back to our NSSC and why coaches need to be educated on this. You should abide by proper bookkeeping techniques, be organized, and always keep receipts and organize your records. Domain 8 is evaluation, and this is our final domain. This includes the evaluation of athletes, staff, other teams, and also self-evaluation. Evaluate athletes on a daily basis during practice. Also evaluate athletes on physical ability, tactical ability, and psychological ability within the sport. In order to evaluate the staff, Hammermeister states, informal talks and observations or planned conferences with the assistant coaches or staff members during the season can be helpful. Scouting's a necessity. Coaches should look at matchups, tendencies, and methods of the opponents. What I see as the most important here, though, is definitely self-reflection, the evaluation of oneself. This is going to allow the coach to improve and be a more effective coach in the future. Gallimore, Gilbert, and Trudell state, we suspect that most coaches already engage in personal reflection and inquiry while experimenting with coaching strategies to resolve coaching problems. This typical youth sports setting, however, does not provide coaches with the elements required to nurture and sustain this critical form of professional development. And this is a significant quote because this illustrates the significance of forming a coaching education community to prepare coaches to self-reflect in an effective manner. In order to reflect in the best possible way, coaches need to be taught how to have some sort of evaluation of oneself. So that is our 8 domains of the NSSC. Now, how does all this relate back to coaching education? Well, for one, coaches are teachers. The coach is a teacher. The biggest concern or the biggest reason coaching education is essential is due to the fact that the coach is a teacher in the traditional sense of being a faculty member at the institution where he or she coaches. Coaches are given the opportunity to educate and prepare athletes for competition. In the same sense, teachers educate their students to prepare for assessment. Coaching education is deeply rooted in the NSSC and NASPE because of the 8 domains of the NSSC are the basic principles and building blocks that coaches deal with in their profession of coaching. The 8 domains provide a sense of authority to back up what coaches must complete in their profession. It's basically the foundation or the mortar. They cover main topics of coaching, which include ethics, conditioning, all the way to organization and administration. So definitely the NSSC and NASPE are going to be that foundation for our coaching education. So what's the connection between these two? The focus is on coaching education. Ohio University centers its entire coaching education philosophy on the eight domains provided in the NSSC. The connection between the NSSC and coaching education is that they both are valuable resources made available for coaches to increase competence in their field. In order to make better coaches, coaches need to be well educated using the basic principles of the NSSC. The need for coaching education is more powerful now than ever, mostly because coaches have the power to influence and instruct a wide array of people. And as you can see here, we have the 8 domains of coaching and why it's important to coaching education. So why do we need it? Well, there also are some ugly aspects to coaching. An example that I want to take a look at is the lack of education can lead to downfall. Down to the left here, we have Mike Rice, Rutgers University men's basketball coach. And he got into a lot of trouble this year. If you follow the link there, you'll notice there's going to be a video showing some of the issues that he had, and we're going to take a look at that.
Rutgers head basketball coach Mike Rice's fiery style has been on public display before. Get crossed up. Known for his coaching intensity, Rice was suspended by Rutgers for 3 games last December for his behavior at team practices, with few specific reasons cited by school officials at the time as to why. This is why. This is just some of the video that led to Rice's suspension. Outside the Lines has obtained not only the roughly 30-minute video reviewed by Rutgers officials, but also hundreds of hours of additional footage of Rutgers practices from the 2 seasons prior to this year. There are shots of Rice heaving balls at players, even at their heads, which you can see better here when the tape is slowed down. Have you ever seen a coach do that?
No. I mean, unbelievable to me.
And as you can see there, why do we need coaching education? A lack of education can lead to a downfall. Mike Rice there is a perfect example. Why do we need to abide by the NSCC? Why do we need to be educated as coaches on how to have a proper philosophy and ethics? I think this is a perfect example. Right there where we left off, Eric Murdoch was one of his former players that also coached with him. He was one of the major people that sort of brought this situation to light. So why do we need this? There's a perfect example of why we need to have coaching education based on the NSSC. Educated coaches are, well, if you had to educate your coaches, you're going to have role models, influential coaches, trailblazers, and even heroes. Taking a look at the 3 coaches I picked here, you have Coach K. We all know the work that he has put in. Also, you know Pat Summitt there, very successful coach for the Tennessee women, and then Tony Dungy. All 3 of these people are well respected within the coaching ranks because they do it the right way. When you have well-educated coaches such as these 3 here that abide by these 8 domains, you're going to have great coaches and you're going to have people that are going to live from that. So benefits of coaching education? Well, first let's talk about the downfalls. There are no downfalls to coaching education based off of these 8 domains. There are, however, a number of benefits. Coaching education creates coaches that care, coaches that are positive, smarter coaches, better coaches, and even better people. One of the people I think that exemplifies this the most is Jim Valvano, the late NC State men's basketball coach. Coach Valvano exhibits what it means for coaches to use their influence to better mankind. Jim Valvano was a coach that abided by the NSCC domains. and it has been documented how his actions have changed the course of not only the basketball world, but also the world in general. The following video exemplifies Coach Valvano's vibrant spirit and his philosophy and ethics on life and basketball should be carried on by everyone.
Time is very precious to me. I don't know how much I have left, and I have some things that I would like to say. Hopefully, at the end, I'll have something that will be important to other people too. But I can't help it. Now I'm fighting cancer. Everybody knows that. And people ask me all the time about how you go through your life and how you make, and nothing has changed for me. As Dick said, I'm a very emotional, passionate man. I can't help it. That's being the son of Rocco and Angelina Valvano. That just comes with the territory, right? We hug, we kiss, we love. And when people say to me, how do you get through life or each day, the same thing. To me, there's three things we all should do every day. We do this every day of our life. You're going to have, what a wonderful, number one is laugh. You should laugh every day. Number two is think. You should spend some time in thought. And number three is you should have your emotions move to tears, to be happiness or joy. Think about it. If you laugh, you think, and you cry, that's a full day. That's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, you're going to have something special.
And if more people would adopt the thinking of Jim Valvano, if more coaches would take on that philosophy, we'd have a lot better coaches out there. So in conclusion, as Gallimore, Gilbert, and Trudell state, repeated calls have been made by prominent sport and education associations for the certain of ongoing professional development networks and learning communities for youth sport coaches. There is a need and desire for more coaches to be educated. What better way to educate these coaches than to center the curriculum around the 8 domains of coaching outlined by the NSSC? If coaches are able to take care of their athletes and prepare them to their potential, then there needs to be a call for coaching education to help guide and develop these coaches. So if coaches would care for their athletes, we're going to have a lot better, more effective coaches out there. And lastly, we have our references. And that concludes our presentation.